For more than 3 centuries, the Philippines endured the weight of Spanish rule, a time marked by foreign domination and the imposition of unfamiliar laws, religion, and customs. Generations of Filipinos grew up under the shadow of colonial power, their voices silenced and their traditions suppressed. Daily life was shaped by the will of the colonizers, with Filipinos often relegated to the margins of their own society. Yet, beneath the surface, a quiet resistance simmered as people held on to their identity and dreams of freedom. By the late 1800s, this resistance grew stronger. A new spirit was rising, a longing for liberty, dignity, and a sense of national identity that united Filipinos from all walks of life. The writings of José Rizal, especially his novels Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, exposed the injustices and abuses of the colonial government. His words awakened Filipinos to their shared struggle and inspired hope for a better future. While Rizal advocated for peaceful reform and education, Andrés Bonifacio believed that only a revolution could break the chains of oppression and bring true change to the nation. Bonifacio founded the Katipunan, a secret society whose members pledged their lives to the cause of independence. They met in secrecy, planning and preparing for the day they would rise up against their oppressors. In 1896, when the Katipunan was discovered by Spanish authorities, Bonifacio and his followers gathered in Pugad Lawan. There, they tore up their cedulas, symbols of colonial control, declaring their commitment to open rebellion. This act, known as the Cry of Pugad Lawan, ignited the Philippine Revolution. The call for freedom spread rapidly, inspiring uprisings across the provinces and uniting Filipinos in a common cause. Despite being outgunned and outnumbered, Filipino revolutionaries fought bravely against the Spanish forces. Many paid the ultimate price, but their courage inspired others to join the struggle. The execution of José Rizal in December 1896 turned him into a martyr for the cause. His death only strengthened the resolve of the revolutionaries, fueling their determination to fight for freedom. The struggle for a free nation had truly begun, born from sacrifice, hope, and the unbreakable spirit of a people determined to shape their own destiny. Amidst the turmoil of revolution, Emilio Aguinaldo emerged as a key leader, inspiring hope among Filipinos yearning for freedom from centuries of Spanish rule. His charisma and strategic mind united many under a common cause, but the path to independence was fraught with peril. Deep divisions within the revolutionary movement led to tragic consequences, most notably the execution of Andrés Bonifacio, another passionate leader whose vision for the nation clashed with Aguinaldo's. This internal strife weakened the revolution at a critical moment. Despite these setbacks, Aguinaldo pressed on, negotiating a truce with Spain at Biaknabato. The agreement forced him into exile in Hong Kong, but he never abandoned the dream of a free Philippines. Everything changed in 1898 with the outbreak of the Spanish-American War. The United States, seeking to defeat Spain, promised support to Filipino revolutionaries. With new hope, Aguinaldo returned from exile, determined to resume the struggle for independence. On June 12, 1898, in Cavite, Aguinaldo boldly declared Philippine independence. The new flag was raised, the national anthem played, and for a brief, shining moment, the Filipino people believed their long-held dream had finally come true. The Malolos Congress soon convened, establishing the First Philippine Republic, the first constitutional democracy in Asia. It was a remarkable achievement, a symbol of Filipino resilience and vision. The new government quickly set about building the foundations of a nation, creating public schools to educate the youth and establishing a postal system to connect communities across the islands. They drafted a constitution that enshrined civil liberties and the rights of citizens, hoping to secure justice and equality for all Filipinos. Yet, this newfound independence was fragile. The dream, so close to reality, was about to be shattered by forces beyond their control. In December 1898, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Spain sold the Philippines to the United States for $20 million, disregarding the Filipinos' declaration of independence and their right to self-determination. The First Republic was not recognized by the new colonial rulers. Filipino leaders, once filled with hope, now faced uncertainty and heartbreak as their government was dissolved. American troops soon arrived, and the hope for true freedom was once again threatened, this time by a new and powerful colonial power. Undaunted, the Filipino people braced themselves for another fight, determined to defend their hard-won rights and sovereignty. Their journey to true nationhood was far from over. The struggle for independence would continue, fueled by the unbreakable spirit of a people who refused to surrender their dream. The promise of independence was shattered as the U.S. imposed its rule, sparking outrage and betrayal. War erupted in 1899 after a fatal encounter in Manila, turning allies into enemies. The American military quickly overpowered Filipino forces, forcing Aguinaldo's government into hiding. Filipino fighters shifted to guerrilla tactics, led by generals like Antonio Luna and Gregorio del Pilar. The war grew brutal. Villages burned, civilians suffered, and atrocities mounted on both sides. Civilian deaths soared into the hundreds of thousands due to violence, famine, and disease. Aguinaldo's capture in 1901 marked the war's end, but resistance lingered. The First Republic was crushed, and the Philippines became an American colony. The struggle for sovereignty would now take a different form. Under American rule, the Philippines underwent sweeping changes. The U.S. introduced public education, sending Thomasite teachers to spread English and modern subjects. Public health improved with new hospitals, vaccination campaigns, and sanitation programs. Infrastructure boomed. Roads, bridges, and ports connected the islands, and Manila was redesigned as a modern city. Politically, Filipinos gained a voice through the Philippine Assembly and later, a fully elected legislature. The Jones Law of 1916 promised eventual independence, and Filipino leaders like Quezon and Osmeña pushed for self-rule. The Tidings-McDuffie Act set a 10-year transition, creating the Commonwealth in 1935 with Quezon as president. Optimism grew as Filipinos prepared for full independence. But just as the dream seemed within reach, a new threat loomed on the horizon. The world was on the brink of war. World War II shattered the promise of independence. In December 1941, Japan invaded, overwhelming Filipino and American defenders. The fall of Bataan and Corregidor led to the horrific Bataan Death March. Japanese occupation brought cruelty, starvation, and repression. Despite hardship, guerrilla resistance flourished, sabotaging Japanese forces and aiding the Allies. General MacArthur's promise, "I shall return," became a beacon of hope. In 1944, Allied and Filipino forces began the campaign to liberate the islands. The Battle of Manila devastated the city, killing over 100,000 civilians. By war's end, the Philippines was free but in ruins. The nation faced the monumental task of rebuilding from the ashes. Independence was finally within reach. On July 4, 1946, the Philippines gained full independence, raising its flag over a battered Manila. The new republic faced immense challenges: destroyed cities, a shattered economy, and social unrest. Early presidents like Roxas and Quirino focused on reconstruction, often relying on U.S. aid with difficult conditions. Magsaysay's populist leadership brought hope, addressing rural poverty and weakening communist insurgency. Successors Garcia and Macapagal promoted Filipino industry and land reform. The Philippines joined the United Nations and embraced democracy, despite ongoing corruption and inequality. These years were a time of rebuilding, learning, and forging a national identity. The foundation for the future was set, but new trials awaited. The 1960s saw Ferdinand Marcos rise to power, promising progress but soon facing unrest and crisis. In 1972, Marcos declared martial law, suspending democracy and silencing opposition. For 14 years, he ruled as a dictator, arresting critics, controlling the media, and instilling fear. Human rights abuses became rampant. Thousands were imprisoned, tortured, or disappeared. Marcos and his cronies amassed vast wealth, plunging the nation into debt. Despite repression, resistance simmered. The assassination of opposition leader Ninoy Aquino in 1983 became a turning point. His death sparked outrage, uniting Filipinos in protest. The spirit of resistance grew, setting the stage for a historic uprising. The nation was ready for change. The dictatorship's days were numbered. The assassination of Ninoy Aquino in 1983 shocked the Philippines and awakened a nation long silenced by fear. His death became a powerful catalyst, fueling a non-violent movement for change and inspiring millions to stand up against oppression. The grief and outrage that swept through the country united Filipinos from all walks of life, igniting a collective hope for a better future. In 1986, President Ferdinand Marcos, facing mounting pressure, called a snap election to legitimize his rule. Cory Aquino, Ninoy's widow, emerged as the opposition's symbol of hope and courage. Her campaign drew massive crowds, and her message of democracy resonated deeply with the people, who were hungry for change after years of dictatorship. The election was marred by widespread fraud, intimidation, and violence. Despite the regime's attempts to manipulate the outcome, Filipinos refused to accept the results. Protests erupted across the nation as citizens demanded truth and justice, determined not to let their voices be silenced. Acts of civil disobedience spread rapidly, and a dramatic military defection led to a tense standoff on EDSA, the main highway in Manila. The world watched as ordinary people bravely confronted tanks and soldiers, risking everything for freedom. Cardinal Sin, a respected religious leader, called on citizens to protect the rebel soldiers. In response, hundreds of thousands of Filipinos poured onto EDSA, forming a human barricade. Their unity and courage became a beacon of hope for the nation. For 4 tense days, people faced down tanks with nothing but prayers, songs, and flowers. They refused to back down, showing the world the power of peaceful resistance and the strength of their convictions. Soldiers, moved by the people's resolve, defied orders to fire on civilians. The world watched in awe as the military and the masses stood together, united in their desire for change. On February 25, 1986, the unthinkable happened. Ferdinand Marcos and his family fled the country, ending decades of authoritarian rule. Cory Aquino was sworn in as president, restoring democracy and giving Filipinos renewed hope for the future. The People Power Revolution became a global symbol of peaceful change, inspiring movements for democracy around the world. The Filipino spirit had triumphed over tyranny, proving that unity and courage can overcome even the darkest times. A new era had begun, filled with hope, freedom, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow for the Philippines. The EDSA revolution restored democracy and inspired the world. Cory Aquino's government rebuilt institutions and ratified a new constitution to safeguard freedom. Challenges persisted: coup attempts, insurgencies, poverty, and corruption. Successive presidents faced old and new problems, but the nation endured. The Philippines grew, its people resilient at home and abroad. Filipino culture thrived, blending tradition and modernity, united by Bayanihan, the spirit of community. Through every trial, hope endured, inspired by the legacy of heroes and the courage of ordinary people. The journey that began with a cry for freedom continues as Filipinos face the future with faith and resolve.